Hey, what's up, guys? Welcome back to another episode of the Fantasy Fellowshow. I'm your host, theFellowKGB. You can follow me on Twitter at theFellowKGB. And today is June 25th. It's about 6:30 in the evening, and we're going to be rolling through our AFC West team previews today. We're going to go alphabetical, so we'll start with the Denver Broncos here. And I just want to say, if you're listening on any of the podcasting platforms, I highly recommend checking us out on YouTube. That's where I do the screen shares, and I can kind of show you guys what I'm talking about when I'm going through my team previews. So just the best value in my opinion. But anyways, thank you for listening, and let's get into the Denver Broncos. So we're on the fantasyfellowship.com. If you go over to the team pages here, you can click on teams. Otherwise, you can scroll down here and select Denver. So we're looking at the head coach here, Vic Fangio. It's his second year there. And then new offensive coordinator, Pat Shurmur, who was with the New York Giants the last few seasons. So looking at the charts here, we got Fangio year 2, and last year they had Rick Scangarello, not sure which one. But this team, it went through a lot of turnover at the quarterback position. It started with Joe Flacco. It went on to, I think his name's Brandon Allen, and then Drew Locke ended up finishing the year. So I'm really not too sure if we can take anything from last year besides a couple of the players like Cortland Sutton, Noah Fant, and Phillip Lindsay, and kind of talking about how those guys did. But this team's going to be a little bit different with Pat Shurmur calling the shots. This team is still going to have a very good defense. They're going to have a lot of competition in the AFC West this year. So I don't know. There's a lot riding on the quarterback room. So let's just take a quick look at that. Of course, we got Drew Locke at the top. They did bring in Jeff Driscoll. They have Brett Rippey in year 2, and then a quarterback here just trying to impress in Riley Neal. But I mean, this is Drew Locke's season. He's walking into the camp as the starter. He's got all that out of the way from his rookie year. So everything's for Drew Locke here in the quarterback room. Let's just take a couple look at his numbers here from last year. I think he started maybe 3 of the last 4 games. I'm not sure what he did. We can look at that real quick too. But anyways, we see just over 1,000 yards, about 64% completion rate's pretty solid, and then 7 touchdowns to 3 interception ratio. And then he did add a little bit of rushing stats here, 18 attempts for 72 yards, no touchdowns. But overall, this is a decent trial run for a rookie to end the season. So if we just look here real quick at what he was doing. So he did end up playing in 5 games. It looks like he started the last 5 games. So he threw a touchdown in every game except just the one where they kind of got routed by Kansas City. But he ended up winning 4 out of his last, 4 out of 5 games, which is pretty solid. If I quick filter here by standard ESPN scoring, we're going to see some numbers. 4 games, double digits. 1 game, not so good. That was the Kansas City Chiefs game. But it looks like he's got a floor of about 12 points building here, a ceiling of about 24, where he ended up throwing 3 touchdowns, 309 yards, an interception against the win at Houston. So very impressive. To beat the Chargers, to beat the Texans on the road, and then to finish up with wins against Detroit and Las Vegas, that's all pretty impressive. So I like where Denver's headed here with Drew Locke, and they did a lot of things in the draft that we'll get to in a little bit here to surround this team with some better talent. So pretty decent little trial run here with Drew Locke at the end of the season. But this team's going to want to run the ball, having a good defense and a young quarterback, which is why they added Melvin Gordon in free agency here. So looking at the running back room, we have Melvin Gordon, Phillip Lindsay, and Royce Freeman. These are going to be the 3 primary ball carriers, and I'm not really sure there's much room left for Royce Freeman anymore, the former 3rd-round pick just a couple of years ago. And then we got some guys here. I don't know if we're going to carry 4 or 5 running backs on this team, but we got Khalfani Muhammad and Levante Bellamy. I would bet that Muhammad makes the team. We'll see if they make a 5th back here. He might go to the practice squad. But anyways, we're looking at Melvin Gordon and Phillip Lindsay forming a pretty solid 1-2 punch. If we look quick at what the Broncos did last year with their touches, they ended up giving Phillip Lindsay the bulk of the carries, almost twice as much, with 224 carries, and he took off for about 1,011 yards, 7 touchdowns, 4.5 per clip. And then we see a little boost here in receiving stats from Phillip Lindsay that he kind of carried over from last year. But the thing about Phillip Lindsay is he's just not a very good pass catcher. I mean, sure, he can catch 35 receptions on 48 targets, but he doesn't create as much space as you would like. He doesn't create as much big plays in the passing game as we see here with this low 5.6 yards per catch. The year before that, he did have 6.9 yards per catch, but he doesn't really add a lot of value in the passing game. So besides Lindsay last year, they used Royce Freeman quite a bit. They used Freeman heavily more towards the beginning of the year, and they kind of phased him down as the season went on. I'm not sure why, but we see Royce Freeman here with 132 carries, just under 500 yards, 3 touchdowns, and then we see Royce Freeman with some a little bit better passing statistics. So both guys were pretty usable for the most part of the year last year. I think if we look quick at what Royce was doing in the beginning of the season, he was really steady in PPR leagues. But down the season, he kind of gets lost here in consistency. But the first 8 weeks, he was hitting double digits here pretty often, 7, 8, and 9 there. So they used. I mean, he had double digit carries in a lot of these games, and then they kind of just handed the keys over to Phillip Lindsay, and he kind of ran away with it there. So there's room for 2 running backs in this system. Now, whether they're going to give Melvin Gordon 200 to 225 carries, that seems like a likely scenario. And then we're going to see probably Phillip Lindsay getting 150, 160 touches. I'm not really quite sure how they're going to break it down, but this leaves, I mean, if you look at the rushing attempts here, they didn't give anybody the ball besides Freeman and Lindsay. We see Devontae Booker with 2 carries and then the fullback with 1. So it's not very good news for Royce Freeman. He's going to be pretty much a Melvin Gordon handcuff. So I would expect Melvin Gordon, to get the starts. He's going to be the big back. He's going to be the primary pass catching back. He was so good at that with San Diego and the Chargers, Los Angeles Chargers. So I think Gordon's going to run away with that role there, and Freeman's going to be his primary backup. And then they're still going to try to work in Phillip Lindsay on the ground because he's so good. And I think the thing with Lindsay is they want to make sure that he stays healthy. He's a smaller guy, and just keeping him fresh. If you look at what he did in the 2018 season, where they kept him under 200 touches, and he ran at 5.4 yards per carry. He was much more fresh. He had more yards his rookie season than he did last year, getting quite a bit more carries. So that kind of makes sense. Overall, I'm kind of into Melvin Gordon. This team, it's a young quarterback. It's a good defense. And this team, they're going to try to run the ball when they can. So I like Melvin Gordon as like a low-end RB2 with upside. And then Phillip Lindsay is really close too. It really depends on, I guess, the split that these two are going to have. But I think Phillip Lindsay's got a pretty cheap ADP right now. So I don't mind getting Phillip Lindsay on my team as my 3rd or my 4th running back. But I just don't think he's going to add much value in the passing game this year, as he's kept a decent floor because of his passing stats the last couple of years. Let's just take a look at his points per game in PPR. So last year, Phillip Lindsay, we see a lot of double-digit games here, but even then, he was, down the stretch, he was kind of hit or miss. So I don't really like these inconsistencies. Everything was really going really well for these guys in the beginning of the season, and I don't know. We see this shift here. Even when they're winning games at the end of the season, we're not seeing a lot of good stats here for our guy, Phillip Lindsay. So I don't know. The running backs are interesting, but I don't see Melvin Gordon being more than an RB2. I don't see Phillip Lindsay being more than a fringe RB2, solid 3rd running back. So it's going to be a muddy room, but overall, I like the talent, but we're just really not sure how it's going to be, dispersed, I guess, all the touches. So, but I would bet Melvin Gordon is going to get the carries. He's going to get the goal line opportunities, and he's probably going to catch the most amount of passes. So that's the running back field. It's pretty exciting, though. A lot of good players back there. Fullback here, Andrew Beck is back, Jeremy Cox. And then let's look at the receiver room. And I guess this is where we'll start to look at the 2020 draft class. The Denver Broncos had quite a bit of, they had a lot of picks here. They ended up taking 3 wide receivers and a tight end. So, of course, they got Jerry Jeudy out of Alabama at 15th overall. And then they come back in the 2nd round and grab a slot receiver, KJ Hamler, here out of Penn State at 46. And then they're going to snag Drew Locke's tight end back from Missouri, Albert Okwuegbunam. We're just going to call him Albert O for now, but a tight end in the 4th round. And then another wide receiver, Tyree Cleveland from Florida in the 7th round at the end of the draft. So a couple guys to keep an eye on, but it's all about Jerry Jeudy and KJ Hamler and how they get integrated into the offense. So I guess looking at the receiver group, we know Cortland Sutton's going to be the alpha there. Jerry Jeudy's going to be the guy that starts opposite Cortland Sutton, and they're going to move him around quite a bit. But it sounds like KJ Hamler is going to be the guy that gets the slot spot right away. And then we got a bunch of guys here trying to impress and make the team. So Deontay Spencer, Tim Patrick, Deshaun Hamilton, these guys have been there for a while. Fred Brown as well. Tyree Cleveland's the rookie. Jawan Winfrey had a pretty impressive preseason with them last year. And then some guys just really trying to make the team here. So we're going to see a lot of turnover here and competition for this 4th, 5th, and 6th receiver spots here. So I don't know. The one guy that I really liked last year was Jawan Winfrey. So keep an eye on him. And everything's going to be about Cortland Sutton, Jerry Jeudy, and KJ Hamler. So let's take a look at this receiving group from last year. We see Cortland Sutton. He dominated the amount of touches here for the receiver group. And they did trade away Emmanuel Sanders last year, so he didn't, he wasn't there for too long. But we see Cortland Sutton end up with 72 catches, 124 targets, 1,112 yards, and 6 touchdowns for 15.4 yards per catch. So Cortland Sutton commanded almost 25% of the target share, which is pretty impressive. And then he also accounted for about 23% of their total yards on offense, which is, pretty impressive as well. I think he ended up being like 2nd in the league in the receiver position in the yard share stat that I've been working on. So, but after Sutton, they really struggled to get any other receiver going here. I mean, they had Sanders working well early, but Deshaun Hamilton kind of fell off last year. Tim Patrick didn't really do much either. And I don't know, no one really stepped up when Emmanuel Sanders got traded. I guess the guy that did benefit the most would be the tight end Noah Fant, who we'll get to in a little bit. But I guess the idea here is that Sutton, because they really didn't have anyone else to throw to, he got all the volume. And now you're adding Jerry Jeudy and KJ Hamler to the mix. So I love Sutton's game. He's got a good deep ball connection with Drew Locke, but it remains to be seen if he's going to be able to get that target share and the yard share that he did last year. So I think for projection-wise, I have Sutton's numbers coming down a little bit. If anything, his efficiency and his touchdowns might go up. I could see that definitely happening, but he's not going to command almost 25% of the target share now that they got a 1st and 2nd round pick added to the receiver group. So if anything, this makes me like Drew. If I'm going to target a Bronco, I'm probably going to target Drew Locke as my quarterback too in Superflex, just because they have so many weapons, adding Jerry Jeudy, KJ Hamler, and then Melvin Gordon even in the passing game. So I like that a lot. And it just, I don't know, Cortland Sutton's a great player. I think he's just going to be a wide receiver 2 this year. I don't know if he can take a step forward with all this competition added at target. So, and then I guess thinking about Jerry Jeudy and KJ Hamler, I don't think KJ Hamler is going to be useful for redraft or anything this year. I still like him in Dynasty. He could add some value there. He can grow with Drew Locke. But Jerry Jeudy is the guy that I'm really interested in. He could be a late round redraft selection that could just, super impress us right away and not look back. And it might not surprise me if he is the number 1 receiver in fantasy this year. I think Drew Locke's going to be able to hit him early. And if you think about Cortland Sutton's game, he's more deep ball and go up and get it kind of stuff, where Jerry Jeudy's more finesse, and he might be able to get open a little bit quicker and easier on different routes. So I really like Jerry Jeudy's game, and I think he's going to be an excellent complement to Sutton. So Jeudy interests me, I think, at ADP. And then I still like Sutton at ADP, but I'm expecting him to be a wide receiver 2 this year. So but overall, it's a fun group to watch, and I'm excited to see these guys grow with Drew Locke. So let's look at the tight ends real quick. Noah Fant is the main starter, of course. And then you got some backups here. Nick Vannett, who they got out of Seattle. I think Vannett was like traded to New England, and I think he signed with Denver. So Jeff Hireman's still around. The rookie Albert O, who we talked about, Jake Butt, Troy Fumagalli, and Austin Fort. This is a really good tight end group here. But we're not really going to care about any of these guys for redraft unless it's Noah Fant. I do like Albert O, maybe in a dynasty league if anything happens to Fant, but that's for another conversation down the road. But let's just take a look at what Noah Fant did last year. He was tight end number 14 in PPR leagues. So that's a really solid floor. We don't really see a lot of tight ends produce right away, but Fant was able to he just stepped right in. And they gave him as many, opportunities as he could. They even tried to give him some rushing attempts here, but that didn't go very well. But anyways, we see 40 receptions on 66 targets, 562 yards and 3 touchdowns for the rookie Fant. really solid floor for him to grow on. And it's kind of like it goes back to what I talked about with the receiving group. I mean, last year Fant had, he enjoyed being basically the number two target in this offense. In fact, he was the second most targeted player in this offense, 13.10% target share. And I see that. I don't really see that growing at all. If anything, I would bet it's going to be, somewhere in the 10, 11, 12%. It might even go down this year, just because of the competition of targets. You add Jerry Jeudy, KJ Hamler, and Melvin Gordon. I think all three of those guys could end up getting, around 10% of the targets. So Fant is, I mean, he's still going to be a very good player. And I think he's got tight end one upside this year. But I'm just a little bit worried about, with all the new mouths to feed in the offense, that some of his hype gets watered down because of all that. So, but anyways, I mean, tight end 14 for a rookie, 562 yards, 3 touchdowns. I mean, I would bet that he's going to get more than 3 touchdowns this year with a full 16-game season. I think that's pretty likely. The thing with Noah Fant is it Noah Fant or Fant? I keep changing my mind on it, I guess, um, but yeah, I mean, 14.1 yards per catch, I see that as being a pretty similar number for him to hit. I think the 3 touchdowns is one he can improve. I think he can hit 600 yards. And I don't know, if he can hit 50 receptions, he's going to be a tight end one. So that's kind of the number, anywhere from 45 to 50 receptions will get him, really close to a tight end one this year. So I don't know, but it's going to keep going back to everything that I was talking about. I mean, you give Drew Locke all these new weapons, and the fact that he won 4 or 5 games with the crew that he had last year, and now you're adding some elite talent, Melvin Gordon catching and running the ball, and then you got Jerry Jeudy, year 2 of Noah Fant, year 3 of Cortland Sutton. There's a lot of good things moving here for the Broncos offense, so I'm pretty excited about it. I don't think I had Drew Locke finish too crazy in my quarterback rankings, but I've got him throwing under 4,000 yards, about 23 touchdowns, 14 picks. And then I guess the running back field here, I ended up with Melvin Gordon getting about 210 rushing attempts. Phillip Lindsay, I feel like this might be too low, but 112. I ended up giving Royce Freeman 55. So I might see Royce Freeman's numbers go even lower, and I might, throw those some of Phillip Lindsay's way. And then the receiving group, Cortland Sutton ended up with 125 targets, Jerry Jeudy 90, KJ Hamler 55. I ended up giving Noah Fant 74 targets. So I gave I ended up with giving more target share to Noah Fant. I ended up with a little decrease for Cortland Sutton. So I don't know. It's super interesting. The Broncos they're going to be a team where, if you want to invest in the Broncos, they could make or break your season. I think a guy like Noah Fant as your tight end one could be a big hit. A guy like Cortland Sutton, as long as you take him as your wide receiver too, I think he's going to be super steady, and he's got a chance to grow on touchdowns as well. And then it's really, I mean, if you bet on Melvin Gordon, Gordon could hit double-digit touchdowns this year. That wouldn't surprise me either. So I think the Broncos are an interesting team because just the nature of the AFC West. If you think about the defenses over there, the defenses aren't that great. And Denver Broncos might have one of the best ones. The Chargers are still pretty solid, though. And then you have, the young Raider defense, and the Chiefs offense isn't that good. But, this division is going to beat itself up. There's going to be a lot of competitive, high-scoring games, I think. So with a young quarterback, I don't know. I'm going to be enjoying a lot of Broncos game on TV. So, but let's actually, before I wrap it up, let's just take a look at the rest of the draft class. We see a couple cornerbacks here. After they did lose their star cornerback, who I can't even think of his name right now. It escapes me. Chris Harris. Yeah, Chris Harris, they lost. So we see a couple cornerbacks to replace that in the 3rd round, another 3rd round pick on a defensive tackle, a linebacker, a guard, and then an edge rusher. So a pretty balanced defensive draft, and then a lot of weapons at the top of the draft. So we like that. Notable offseason additions, of course, Melvin Gordon, offensive guard Graham Glasgow, Nick Vannett, AJ Bouye, and Jarrell Casey. So a lot of good things here happening for Denver. I'm trying to remember how many games they won. 7-9 last year. I would bet this team's looking at 8 to 9 wins at a minimum. But a lot of it depends on Drew Locke, and if he can develop and take a step forward with the little bit that he got under his belt last year. So I don't know, super exciting team, a lot of young talent, and we'll see if it all comes together. But I think that's going to do it for the Denver Broncos preview here. And if you're watching on YouTube, please leave a comment. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel as we grow this thing. And if you're listening on any of the podcasting platforms, it'd be really cool if you could leave us a rating or a review, whatever you got to do. And yeah, thank you for listening and watching, and we'll see you in another video. Peace.